How's it going, everybody? Sessiion here. Welcome to a Dead by Daylight overview, kind of talking about the perspective of how I feel like after playing against, the killers in this game. And, next one on the list here is the nurse. So I think everybody also, in strong consideration, just confirms that this killer is the best killer in the game and has been for a very long time for a bunch of reasons too, and it makes total sense. Me and this killer, we kind of have like our arguments, if you will, because there are moments in time where I play against a killer and this one is just one that either destroys me completely or just like can't find their way at all even to like the bathroom. I feel like in the hands of a good killer player, this killer is extremely lethal, and I think that the gameplay that you find yourself playing against a nurse really showcase that too, because like obviously every killer takes skill in this game. Some take more than others, and that's not really the problem here. It's really more to the fact that like if you really know how to play nurse, this killer is powerful with a purpose, and it's heavily showcased. I personally can't play this killer to save my life. I remember one time I got a redeem award from a fellow viewer who was like, hey, like play the nurse. I don't care what you use perk wise, just like play the nurse. And I was like, okay, well, I've never played nurse, so this will be the first time I find out. And I learned I can't play the nurse. I've tried. I was playing against a bunch of random players. They just did gens and they were just gone. I got a couple hits, and for me personally, the hits didn't feel satisfying. But it's because I knew for that moment that I just never played the nurse in my life, so I just didn't know how to like play the nurse. But if I was able to practice and like learn the maps and the positioning and all that fun stuff, then playing this killer would definitely be very satisfying. And I think that killers who play this character know for sure as well that they get so much out of being able to play her effectively too, because again, she just has the capability of covering so much ground. You got to thrive heavily on using her blinks in order to be able to take advantage of her movement speed, and the builds that you can come up with too are wild. And I think that's also like the big trade-off for her too. If she didn't have the ability to use other killer perks, then she would be a lot harder to use in some cases, but a lot easier for others. Like her whole playstyle I think would change as a result, like low-key. But she's still a very powerful killer though, so it's not really gonna take away anything out of the fact that like she's just a lethal weapon in the hands of a killer. So I feel like when I go through a lot of the things that the killer has as a whole, her perks are kind of like where they are now. I know that thanatophobia is one of those perks that every killer thrives on to some degree, and they definitely changed the heck out of this perk. Because I remember before it used to affect healing also, right? And they had to basically just take that out. But again, if this perk was in her hands, right, it's actually kind of harder to use Thanato for this killer versus a lot of others. Killers like the Legion take way better advantage of Thanatophobia because the penalty that comes from it is actually pretty crazy. I don't think that the Force Survivor portion of that perk was actually there for the entirety of it. I feel like that was a rework addition at some point, but then that was also really strong, especially because the perks can be shared across other killers. Thanatophobia is a very lethal perk for a very strong purpose. Nurse's Calling too for the same thing. It's actually pretty crazy how hardcore Nurse's Calling is from a killer perspective. That perk sucks to deal with when you find out too, just because like the amount of information that you get from that perk is so wild. Because again, the Thanatophobia and Nurse's Calling combined together, right? The fact that it's or at least when it was a reduction in healing, right, you have to take more time to heal, and nurses lets you benefit from that even further, so it's even better to kind of capitalize. So the combination of the two, really powerful. Thanatophobia now obviously just like is not inclusive of healing, which is like fine. It's not like anything crazy, but still a very powerful perk. And so in the hands of the nurse, it's actually still a very dangerous perk to deal with. So but again, her powers are just like the fact that you can combine it with so many other perks easily put her in top tier with a purpose. So the fact that like the blink you can actually see where you can teleport is kind of insane. The fatigue that comes from the blink hit is like literally like whatever. It kind of fascinates me how hard it is to actually deal with the blinking, but it's also fascinating too because like she also can be heavily messed with from like the mind game perspective. I've learned that over the course of playing nurses that are like just in my games, like good and bad, like doesn't really matter. But if you can force a nurse to travel or blink in a certain direction or go in a certain pathway or whatever, you can actually mess with a nurse pretty hardcore. And I've learned that too. But I feel like in the moment when I'm trying to deal with a nurse, I still think to this day I don't know what I need to do to actually like automatically be like, okay, it's a nurse, she's coming this way, I got to do this. I actually don't have that kind of mental thought when I'm fighting killers. I think that might be like a me improvement thing for the most part, but I think still it doesn't even matter for her because she's still very, very powerful. Honestly, also fun fact, I didn't even know that she was I knew she had the spirit world thing, but I didn't realize she also suffered from light burn while she's in the middle of charging a blink. I didn't know that she can't charge a blink if the light's on her. I've never known that. I would love to go through the patch notes changelog to see if that's been a thing since the very beginning of time or if it got added over the course of time. Because if that was the case, honestly, I'm seeing reasons now to use flashlights besides just trying to get like a flashlight blind, because in my mind that's the only reason why I would ever use a flashlight. But because this light burn thing exists for like more kills than I'm realizing, pretty fascinating stuff actually. So I'm actually kind of intrigued to go through this further and see like what it is that she's got going on with it. So but like I said, like the killer is really, really complicated to play with, but you still have a really hard time dealing with her as a whole. It's pretty crazy actually. Her add-ons also just like really showcase how well she's able to benefit from a whole lot of, she has a very wide variety of add-ons for her power. It's kind of insane actually. I feel like people use this add-on to like target the location of the blink for a very long time until they start getting used to it, and then they just start like understanding the distance covered. That's a really great like beginner's add-on to use for the nurse, just to kind of get familiar with like how she functions. I think that's really, really fascinating that they add that. And even more so too, the fact that she can actually like reduce her range and get more points, or even like reduce the recharge time per token to blink as well. Like she's got so many different power things that just really work for her. It's actually fascinating to me, because honestly, if I'm going through the list of add-ons that I can easily see from the killer's perspective when they're playing with nurse, people don't really use nurse's add-ons. I don't actually think so, except for like the ones that either reduce her fatigue duration or the recharge time. I think those are the the ones that I end up seeing like the most. But I actually have no idea. Like I can't believe she has like her own nurses or add-on. I've never seen this add-on before from her. Hitting someone with a blink attack reveals their aura if they're healing or being healed within 28 meters of the nurse. Like it's literally a nurse's calling for this. That's so wild. Being back to the previous location. I've never seen this either actually. I didn't know she had an ability as an add-on to go back to where she was like coming from. Which is kind of crazy to me because like it actually tells me that like she's able to you can actually really like hardcore mind game with her. She has it on like a Tinkerer's when she gets a hit. That's so wild. And then her iridescence. I've never seen these iridescence ever. Increasing the tokens by 1 token, and then the recharge power time by 50% as well. And then increases the movement speed of the nurse to 4.2 meters for the entire trial. But then she has 1 less token for the. That's actually so crazy that she has this. I've never seen either of those two add-ons like ever. That's so nuts actually. Hold on, let me see. Oh, okay. So she didn't have light burn until patch point 112. Well, so then this has been around for a very very long time. But again, it's fascinating because I never actually knew that she had this as a thing ever. I never knew this. Oh, people think it's a nerf that she went from 3 blinks to 2. See, I don't really know though. I mean, I get it though because she covers a lot less ground with 2 blinks versus 3, but I feel like aiming your hits might actually complicate it further for how she's able to actually like benefit from um like using that. 7 blinks were possible with the versions of this thing, and then what? I didn't even know she can do that many blinks back then. Oh, her default speed also used to be 4 meters and they brought it down. That's actually kind of nuts. Okay. Her carry movement speed went from 3.5 to 3.6. Okay, so then they technically buffed it so that it matched the other killers. That's fascinating too, that they actually had different carrying speeds for killers. I wonder if that's still like applied even today. I actually have no idea. They standardized the nurse's post-blink lunge to the default variation for all killers. That was back in 1.9. That's like years ago. The nurse can blink upwards and downwards since 1.9 also. See, that's a thing that I'm so shocked by, because the fact that she's had the capabilities of blinking like directionally is crazy to me. Like I'm so shocked by that, because she's so unexpected because of this ability. They really did a great quality of life change to apply that to her since 1.9, and then even still to this day. Because the thing is, like, too, if you think about a lot of the maps that we have in the game, there's so many maps that have like elevation and stuff like that, and the fact that she can, you know, blink and look straight up and just go to the next floor is such a crazy power of covering distance. I would love to know what it looked like before she had the ability to go up and down through floors and ceilings, because I feel like, you know, if you're going upstairs and had to, like, you know, turn a corner, I feel like you couldn't turn the corner with her if you had the inability to blink up and downward. So that probably will explain why she had like 3 blinks instead of 2, so she can like easily like kind of like, you know, move quickly but also still like travel. So I don't know, I understand it though, but like I said, even it's crazy because even still after some of these nerfs and all these quality of life changes, she's still like the best killer in the game, and like it totally makes sense. This honestly, the upwards and downwards blinking through floors and ceilings thing is the thing that really set her off to be like the craziest killer in the game, like without question. So I don't really, you know, I ain't really mad about it. I think it's just crazy she has that power. She's had it for so long too. You know, then they nerfed her a little bit to make the reload time, you know, be different for the post fatigue. And they reduced the blinks from 5 to 3 with the add-on changes too, so that makes sense. And then with 5.5 rework, at least, or quality of life changes, they rewrote the majority of code governing the nurse to fix issues that plagued her over the years. Okay, so then they kind of they just made her a lot more smoother to play with too, which is pretty cool. So I get that though, because I feel like there must have been like a ton of bugs with her blinking up and through things, and then that became like a huge issue. So I'm glad that they were actually able to, like, you know, like fix that. I just think it's fascinating that like she just had all these things changed to her too. So like honestly, it's kind of interesting to me because I feel like she's the best killer in the game, but she's not annoying. She's definitely very difficult to deal with. But one thing for sure that needs to be established is that despite how powerful she is as like a high top tier killer, the mind games you can play with this killer and kind of just catch her way off guard is so fascinating to me. Because I feel like if it's in the hands of a really good nurse, then like, yeah, she's gonna be a force to be reckoned with. But if you actually play as her and she's just like all over the place, then like, yeah, you know, you can easily have her blink to the other side of the map. Same thing like with the hillbilly, right? And then her trying to recover that ground is just really difficult. Plus, like, if you try to figure out how she moves when she does like her post lunge and then she doesn't get a hit on you, you know, the amount of spacing that she can actually recover from is not as much as you think that it is, except for when she comes back, right? Then she's to re-blink and play the guessing game again. So it's weird. Like she deserves to be the #1 killer, but she's not a killer that requires like a heavy, crazy nerf or rework or change or nothing of the nature. Her design just allows her to be very, very powerful, and I feel like that's just the the takeaway point for that from there. So let me know what you think. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like they would easily they can do a lot of stuff for her to make her even more lethal now that I think about it, because just people are still having a hard time dealing with her. But I don't know, like I said, she's top tier. I'm cool with that, because I feel like, because she's also got like a high like ladder, it's deserved. It's well deserved to players who learn how to master this killer in a way that make it really easy for them to just kind of go nuts. But the frustration that comes from fighting this killer, especially in the hands of a good one, isn't really all too bad. Like, you don't really hate yourself afterwards for losing to her. You do wish you can figure out how to get better against her though, and I feel like that's very important. So yeah, like I said, let me know in the comments what you think about the killer, and have a good one.